The bullet whizzed past Tabitha Harrison's ear so close she felt the heat of it sear across her cheek. And in that split second when her world tilted sideways, she made the only decision that mattered. She ran and never once looked back. The year was 1872, and Yuba City, California had been her home for exactly 3 weeks before everything went to hell. She had come west after her father's death in Illinois, following a vague promise of work at a boarding house owned by a distant cousin. What she had not expected was to witness a bank robbery on her first trip to collect supplies, nor to lock eyes with one of the masked men as he fled the scene. The recognition in his gaze had been immediate and terrifying. He knew she could identify him. She had seen the snake tattoo coiling up his neck, visible just above his bandana. In a town this small, that kind of detail would get a man hanged. The shot started 30 seconds after their eyes met. Tabitha did not scream. She did not freeze. She gathered her skirts in both fists and ran faster than she had ever run in her 20 years of life, her boots pounding against the sun-baked dirt of the main street. Behind her, she heard men shouting, more gunfire, the thunder of hooves. She did not turn back, not once. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs, but her legs kept moving, carrying her past the general store, past the saloon, past the church with its white painted steeple. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she had to get away from those bullets, from that cold recognition in the robber's eyes, from the certainty that he would kill her to keep her quiet. The edge of town approached fast. Beyond it lay open country, rolling hills dotted with oak trees, and the distant promise of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was dangerous territory for a woman alone, but staying in town felt like certain death. A strong hand caught her arm and yanked her sideways so hard she stumbled. Tabitha opened her mouth to scream, but the man who had grabbed her was already pulling her behind a water trough, his body shielding hers as another bullet struck the wooden post where she had been standing a heartbeat before. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice rough and urgent. He wore a dusty brown hat pulled low, and his sun-weathered face was all sharp angles and intensity. A silver star glinted on his vest. Deputy. She had seen him around town but never spoken to him. "Do not move until I tell you." Tabitha pressed herself against the trough, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The deputy rose slightly, his hand on the revolver at his hip, scanning the street with practiced efficiency. She watched his profile, noting the strong jaw, the concentration in his blue-gray eyes, the way he held himself with absolute certainty. He could not have been more than 25, but he carried himself like someone who had seen enough trouble to last a lifetime. How many? He called out to someone she could not see. 3, came the response from across the street. Headed north. The deputy glanced down at her, and for a moment their eyes met. "You hurt?" Tabitha shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Good. I am Cole Jackson. When I say go, you are going to run to the sheriff's office. It is the building with the green door, 2 down from here. You understand?" "I understand," she managed to whisper. "Go." She went. Her legs felt like water, but she forced them to carry her the short distance to the sheriff's office. She burst through the green door and collapsed against the interior wall, gasping for air. An older man with a gray mustache looked up from his desk, his hand automatically moving to his weapon before he registered that she was unarmed and terrified. "You the girl they were shooting at?" he asked, already on his feet. "I saw them," Tabitha said, her voice shaking. "The bank robbers. One of them saw me looking at him. He had a snake tattoo on his neck." The sheriff's expression darkened. "Sam Garrett, that rat bastard, has been causing trouble from here to Sacramento." He moved to the window, peering out through the dusty glass. "Stay here. "Do not leave this building." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone in the sparse office. Tabitha sank into a wooden chair, her whole body beginning to shake now that the immediate danger had passed. She pressed her hands together to stop their trembling, but it was no use. The reality of what had just happened crashed over her like a wave. Someone had tried to kill her, multiple someones. They had shot at her in broad daylight on a public street, and if that deputy had not pulled her out of the way. She could not finish the thought. Time passed strangely after that. She heard more gunfire in the distance, then shouting, then an eerie silence that stretched on and on. Tabitha sat in that chair and stared at the wall, trying to make sense of her new reality. 3 weeks in California, and she had already made enemies who wanted her dead. The door opened an hour later, making her jump. Cole Jackson stepped inside, his hat in his hands. There was a fresh cut on his forehead and dust covered his clothes, but he was alive and whole. Relief flooded through Tabitha so suddenly it surprised her. "They got away," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "Headed into the foothills. We will organize a posse at first light." His gaze found hers, and something in his expression softened. "You are safe now. They would not dare come back into town tonight. But they will come back," Tabitha heard herself say. "Eventually, because I can identify them." Cole did not lie to her or offer false reassurances. She appreciated that. "Yes," he said simply, "they probably will." "What am I supposed to do?" He pulled up a chair and sat down across from her, his elbows resting on his knees. Up close, she could see that his eyes were more gray than blue, and they held a depth of understanding that made something in her chest tighten. "First, you are going to tell me everything you saw, every detail. Then we are going to make sure you are never alone until those men are caught or run out of the territory. I cannot ask you to protect me. You have a whole town to look after." "You are part of this town," Cole said, as if that settled the matter. "And I already decided I am not letting anything happen to you." The certainty in his voice made her believe him, which was foolish. She barely knew this man, but something about the way he looked at her, steady and unwavering, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could stop running. She told him everything. The snake tattoo, the color of the bandanas, the horses they rode, the way one of them had a distinctive limp. Cole listened to every word, occasionally asking questions, his focus absolute. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "Sam Garrett, Dutch Reynolds, and probably Johnny Pike," he said. "They have been running together for about 6 months. Robbed a stage near Marysville last month, shot the driver. They are mean and stupid, which makes them dangerous. What happens now? Now I walk you back to wherever you are staying, and tomorrow we start hunting them down." The boarding house where Tabitha lived was run by her cousin Martha, a stern woman in her 40s who took one look at Tabitha's pale face and immediately ushered her inside. Cole explained the situation in brief, professional terms, and Martha's expression grew grimmer with each word. "She will stay in the back room," Martha declared. "No windows facing the street. I will keep the doors locked. I will have someone watching the house," Cole added. "And I will check in regularly." "You think they will come here?" Martha asked, her voice sharp with worry. "I think they are cowards who prefer easy targets," Cole said, "but I am not taking chances." He tipped his hat to both of them and left, his boots heavy on the wooden porch. Tabitha watched him go, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. She had lived her whole life in a small Illinois town where everyone knew everyone, where nothing exciting ever happened. The most dangerous thing she had ever faced was a harsh winter. This brutal new reality should have terrified her beyond reason. Yet somehow, with Cole Jackson's promise of protection, she felt safer than she had expected. Martha led her to the back room, a small but clean space with a narrow bed and a washstand. "Get some rest," her cousin ordered. "Tomorrow will be difficult enough without you collapsing from exhaustion." But rest did not come easily. Tabitha lay in the darkness, listening to every creak and groan of the old building, her mind replaying those terrifying moments in the street over and over. She saw the gun rising, felt the heat of the bullet, heard the crack of gunfire. She also saw Cole Jackson's face, the way he had looked at her with such fierce determination, as if her safety was the most important thing in his world. She finally drifted off near dawn, and when she woke, sunlight was streaming through the high window. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted up from downstairs. Tabitha dressed quickly, splashing water on her face from the basin. Her hands were steadier today, though her heart still raced when she thought about what lay ahead. Martha was in the kitchen when Tabitha came down, along with two other boarders, an elderly man named Mr. Patterson who worked at the land office, and a young widow named Sally Foster who taught at the schoolhouse. They both looked up when Tabitha entered, their expressions sympathetic. "We heard what happened," Sally said quietly. "How absolutely terrifying." "I am all right," Tabitha replied, though she was not entirely sure that was true. A knock at the door made everyone tense. Martha went to answer it, and relief crossed her face when she saw who stood there. "Deputy Jackson, come in." Cole stepped inside, removing his hat. His gaze went directly to Tabitha, assessing, checking. "Morning," he said. "I wanted to let you know that the posse rode out an hour ago. Sheriff Morrison is leading it. I am staying in town to keep watch." "You should be with them," Tabitha protested. "Catching those men—" "My job is protecting this town," Cole said evenly. "And right now that means protecting you." Something in his tone made it clear this was not up for debate. Martha invited him to sit for coffee, and he accepted, settling into a chair at the kitchen table with an ease that suggested he had been here before. The conversation flowed around Tabitha, discussing town news and the likelihood of rain, but she was acutely aware of Cole's presence. The way he took up space without dominating it, the quiet confidence in his every movement, the fact that his eyes kept returning to her, as if checking to make sure she was still there, still safe. "I need to go to the general store," Martha announced after breakfast. "We are low on flour and sugar." "I will walk with you," Cole offered immediately. "Miss Harrison should come too. Better if she is not alone." So Tabitha found herself walking down the same street where she had nearly died the day before, flanked by her cousin and a deputy she barely knew. The morning sun was already hot, promising another scorching California day. People stopped to stare as they passed, and Tabitha heard the whispers. The girl who saw the robbers, the one they tried to kill. She held her head high and kept walking, refusing to show fear. The general store was cool and dim inside, smelling of tobacco and coffee beans. Martha moved through the aisles with practiced efficiency while Cole positioned himself near the door, keeping watch. Tabitha wandered to the back, where bolts of fabric were stacked on shelves. She ran her fingers over a length of blue calico, trying to focus on something normal and ordinary. "Pretty color," a voice said beside her. Tabitha turned to find Sally Foster examining the same fabric. "It is," she agreed. "Cole Jackson is a good man," Sally said quietly, apparently deciding to skip any pretense. "He came here about 3 years ago from Texas. Never talks much about why he left, but he is the best deputy this town has ever had." "Why are you telling me this?" Sally smiled slightly. "Because I saw the way he looked at you this morning, and the way you looked at him. Just thought you should know he is worth looking at." Heat flooded Tabitha's cheeks. "I was not. We only just met." "Sometimes that is all it takes," Sally said gently. "My husband and I knew within a day." We had 5 good years before the fever took him." Her expression turned melancholy for a moment before she shook it off. "Anyway, I should let you shop. Just wanted to say hello properly." She drifted away, leaving Tabitha standing there with her thoughts in turmoil. Was Sally right? Had there been something in the way Cole looked at her? Or was it just the intensity of the situation making her imagine things that were not there? The day passed slowly. Cole stayed close, a constant presence that should have felt oppressive but somehow did not. He walked them back to the boarding house, checked all the doors and windows, and only left when he was satisfied that everything was secure. "I will be back this evening," he promised. "Lock the door behind me." Evening came, and with it, Cole Jackson as promised. He brought news that the posse had found tracks heading east toward the mountains but had lost them in the rocky terrain. They would try again tomorrow. Tabitha listened to this with a sinking feeling in her stomach. Every day those men remained free was another day she had to look over her shoulder. "They will catch them," Cole said, reading her expression. "Sam Garrett is not as smart as he thinks he is. And if they do not, then I will," he said simply, as if it were a fact rather than a promise. They sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Martha had gone to bed early with a headache, leaving them alone except for the sounds of the town settling down for the night. Somewhere a dog barked. A piano played in the saloon 2 streets over. The air smelled of dust and wood smoke. "Tell me about Illinois," Cole said after a long silence. So Tabitha did. She told him about the farm where she grew up, about her father who had been a blacksmith, about the long winters and the tight-knit community. She told him about her mother dying when she was young, about being the only child, about feeling like she was suffocating in that small town where nothing ever changed, about her father getting sick last winter, fading away slowly until he was gone, leaving her with nothing but debts and a distant cousin's offer of a new start in California. Cole listened to all of it, his attention never wavering. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment before speaking. "My father was a sheriff in Texas," he said. "Got shot when I was 20, died 2 days later. I left after that. Could not stay in the place where everyone looked at me with pity." "I am sorry," Tabitha said softly. "Me too." He turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were shadowed and serious. "I know what it is like to feel like you are running from something, but sometimes running brings you exactly where you need to be. You really believe that?" "I am starting to," he said, and something in his voice made her heart skip. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Then Martha called from inside that it was getting late and the spell broke. Cole stood, settling his hat on his head. "Lock up tight," he said. "I will be watching from across the street tonight." "You do not have to do that." "I know," he said. "But I saw you never turn back yesterday, even with bullets flying. That kind of courage deserves protecting." He left before she could respond, his tall figure disappearing into the gathering darkness. Tabitha stood on the porch for a long moment, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart was racing for entirely different reasons than it had the day before. The next 3 days followed a similar pattern. The posse continued their search with no success. Cole maintained his vigilant watch over the boarding house and over Tabitha specifically. She found herself looking forward to his visits, to the conversations that grew longer and more personal with each passing day. He told her about learning to shoot when he was 10, about his mother who had died giving birth to a stillborn sister, about the loneliness of being a lawman in a rough territory. She told him about her dreams of opening a dress shop someday, about her love of reading, about how sometimes she felt guilty for being relieved that her father's death had freed her from a life she had not wanted. On the 4th day, everything changed. Tabitha was helping Martha hang laundry in the backyard when she heard raised voices from the front of the house. She dropped the sheet she had been holding and ran, her heart in her throat. Cole stood in the parlor with another man she did not recognize, someone wearing a marshal's badge. They were arguing in low, tense voices that cut off when she entered. "What is happening?" Tabitha demanded. Cole's jaw was tight. "Marshal Hensley here thinks you should go to Sacramento until this is resolved. He believes the men might have left the area entirely." "But you do not agree," she said, reading his expression. "No, I do not. Sam Garrett is not the type to leave loose ends. He will come back." Marshal Hensley, a portly man with a graying beard, frowned at Cole. "You are letting your feelings cloud your judgment, Jackson. The girl would be safer in a city with more resources." "The girl has a name," Tabitha said sharply, "and I would like to be included in decisions about my own safety." Both men looked at her in surprise, as if they had forgotten she could speak for herself. She crossed her arms and glared at them both. "What do you really think, Deputy Jackson?" Cole met her gaze steadily. "I think Sacramento is 3 days' ride from here. I think you would be vulnerable on the road with only a stage driver for protection. And I think once you are there, I cannot guarantee anyone would watch over you the way I can here." "That is pure arrogance," Marshal Hensley sputtered. "That is reality," Cole shot back. "I know these men, I know how they think, and I am telling you sending her away alone is a death sentence." The conviction in his voice settled something in Tabitha's chest. She looked at the marshal. "I am staying in Yuba City. Now see here, I am 20 years old and unmarried, which means I am free to make my own choices," Tabitha interrupted. "And I choose to trust Deputy Jackson's judgment." Marshal Hensley looked between them, his expression sour. "Fine, but if something happens, it is on both of you." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was profound. Cole let out a long breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," Tabitha said. "You have been right about everything so far. I am not going to stop trusting you now just because some marshal thinks he knows better." Something shifted in Cole's expression, a warmth entering his eyes that had not been there before. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Besides," Tabitha added, trying to lighten the mood, "I do not think I could stand 3 days in a stage coach." That earned her a small smile, the first real one she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines and making him look younger, less burdened. Tabitha felt her breath catch. "I should get back to my rounds," Cole said, though he made no move toward the door. "But I wanted to ask. Tomorrow is Sunday. Would you come to church with me? I mean, I know you probably would go anyway, but I thought maybe we could sit together." The request was so unexpectedly sweet that Tabitha found herself smiling. "I would like that." His answering grin was brilliant. "Good. That is good. I will come by in the morning then." He left, and Tabitha stood in the empty parlor, her hand pressed to her cheek. She felt warm all over, her stomach fluttering with something that was definitely not fear. Martha appeared in the doorway, her expression knowing. "That young man is courting you." "Martha, it has only been 4 days. Some things do not need time," her cousin said pragmatically. "They just need truth, and the truth is plain as day on both your faces." Tabitha wanted to protest, but she could not find the words, because Martha was right. In 4 days, Cole Jackson had become essential to her in a way she could not fully explain. She trusted him with her life. She looked forward to his presence like she looked forward to sunrise. And the thought of him caring for her the way she was beginning to care for him made her heart race faster than any gunfire ever could. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Tabitha dressed with extra care, choosing her best dress, a deep green cotton that brought out the amber in her hazel eyes. She pinned her dark brown hair up carefully, allowing a few curls to frame her face. When she came downstairs, Sally whistled appreciatively. "Someone is hoping to catch a certain deputy's attention," she teased. "Hush," Tabitha said, but she was smiling. Cole arrived exactly on time, wearing clean clothes and with his hair neatly combed. He had shaved too, she noticed, and there was a hint of nervousness in his eyes that she found endearing. He offered her his arm, and they walked to the church together, Martha and the other boarders trailing behind at a discreet distance. The church was small but beautiful, with whitewashed walls and simple wooden pews. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. People turned to watch as Cole led Tabitha to a pew near the front, and she heard the whispers start immediately. She ignored them, settling into her seat with her head high. The service was lovely. The preacher spoke about courage and faith, about trusting in providence even in dark times. Tabitha felt the words settle over her like a blessing. Beside her, Cole sang the hymns in a surprisingly good baritone, and once when they shared a hymnal, their fingers brushed and neither pulled away. After the service, they stood outside in the sunshine while people milled about socializing. Several townspeople came up to express their concern for Tabitha and their support for the law's efforts to catch the robbers. She thanked them graciously, aware all the while of Cole's steady presence at her side. "Miss Harrison, Deputy Jackson." The sheriff approached them, his expression grave. "Could I speak with you both for a moment?" They followed him a short distance away from the crowd. Sheriff Morrison kept his voice low. "The posse came back this morning. They found a camp in the foothills that looked recently abandoned. Signs suggest 3 men heading back this direction." Tabitha felt her stomach drop. Cole's hand moved to her elbow, steadying her. "When?" Cole asked tersely. "Could be tonight, could be tomorrow. Hard to say. But Jackson, I need you extra vigilant. I have a feeling they are going to make a move soon." "I will be ready," Cole promised. The sheriff nodded and walked away. Tabitha stood very still, trying to process this new information. After days of relative calm, the threat was suddenly real and immediate again. "Hey," Cole said softly, turning her to face him. "Look at me." She did. His gray eyes were serious but not afraid. "I meant what I said before," he told her. "I am not letting anything happen to you. Those men would have to go through me, and I promise you that is not an easy thing to do. I do not want you to get hurt because of me." "That is my choice to make," Cole said, "and I am making it." "You understand?" Tabitha nodded, not trusting her voice. The intensity of his gaze, the protectiveness in his stance, the way he held her elbow so gently despite the strength in his hands, all of it combined to create a feeling so overwhelming she thought she might cry. "Good," Cole said. "Now, I am going to take you back to the boarding house, and then I am going to make sure this town is locked down tighter than a drum. But first, I need to tell you something." "What?" He hesitated, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. "I have been a lawman for 5 years. In that time, I have protected a lot of people. It is what I do. But this feels different. You feel different. And I need you to know that when this is over, when those men are caught or gone or dead, I am going to ask if I can court you properly. But I am telling you now because if something happens tonight, I want you to know that these past few days have meant something to me. You mean something to me." Tabitha's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Cole, you do not have to say anything," he interrupted quickly. "I just needed you to know." "No, I want to say something," Tabitha insisted. "I want to tell you that when you pulled me behind that water trough and saved my life, something changed for me. I have spent the last 4 days trying to convince myself it was just gratitude or fear or circumstance, but it is not. It is you. The way you listen when I talk, The way you make me feel safe even when everything is dangerous. The way you look at me like I am someone worth protecting, worth knowing, worth caring about." Cole's eyes had gone very bright. "You are," he said hoarsely. "You are worth all of that and more." They stood there in the churchyard, the Sunday crowd flowing around them, and Tabitha felt the world narrow to just the two of them. She wanted to kiss him. The urge was so strong it shocked her. But they were in public, and this was 1872, and there were rules about such things. As if reading her mind, Cole smiled slightly. "Later," he said softly, a promise in the word. "Later," she agreed. He walked her back to the boarding house, staying longer than usual to check every lock and window twice. Martha fed him lunch, and they all sat around the kitchen table talking about nothing in particular, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. But tension hummed beneath every word, every gesture. Something was coming. They all felt it. As the sun began to set, Cole prepared to leave. "I am going to be watching from the hotel across the street tonight," he told them. "I have a clear view of the front door from there. If you hear anything at all, you light a lamp in the front window. That will be my signal." "Be careful," Tabitha said, wishing she could say more, could make him understand how much his safety mattered to her now. "Always am," he said with a confidence she hoped he truly felt. Night fell over Yuba City like a curtain. Tabitha lay in her small back room, fully clothed, listening to the sounds of the house settling. Martha had gone to bed, as had the other boarders, but Tabitha knew she would not sleep. Every creak, every whisper of wind made her tense. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Cole sitting in that hotel room, watching, waiting, protecting her even now. She must have dozed eventually, because she came awake with a start at the sound of breaking glass. It came from the front of the house, followed by a thud and men's voices speaking in low, urgent tones. Her heart leaped into her throat. She started to rise, then remembered Cole's instructions. The lamp. She needed to light the lamp. Tabitha scrambled out of bed as quietly as she could and eased her door open. The hallway was dark, but she could see light flickering from downstairs. They had broken in through a window and lit a lantern. She heard Martha's voice raised in protest, then a man's sharp command to shut up. Moving on instinct and terror, Tabitha crept to the front room where they kept a lamp in the window. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the matches, but she managed to light it on the third try. The lamp flared to life, casting shadows on the walls. "There," a voice said from downstairs. "Someone is up there." Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Tabitha backed away from the window, her mind racing. She had no weapon, no way to defend herself. She could only hope that Cole had seen the signal and was coming. The door burst open and a man stood there, backlit by the hall lamp. She recognized the snake tattoo immediately. Sam Garrett. His face was hard and mean, his eyes cold. He held a gun pointed directly at her chest. "Well, well," he said. "The girl who saw too much, leave her alone," Martha's voice called from somewhere behind him. "She is just a child." "She is a witness," Garrett said flatly, "and witnesses need to be dealt with." He raised the gun, and Tabitha did the only thing she could think of. She threw the lamp at him. It struck his arm and shattered, oil and flame spreading across the floor. Garrett cursed and stumbled back, and Tabitha ran. Not toward the door where he blocked her path, but toward the window. She grabbed a chair and smashed it through the glass, not caring about the shards that cut her hands, thinking only of escape. "You little," Garrett lunged for her, but the flames were spreading faster now, catching on the old dry wood. Tabitha climbed through the broken window onto the porch roof, her feet slipping on the shingles. Behind her, she heard more shouting, confusion, the roar of flames. The drop to the ground was at least 12 feet, but she did not hesitate. She jumped, landing hard in the dirt, pain shooting through her ankle. She stumbled forward and ran straight into someone's chest. Strong arms caught her, and she looked up into Cole's face. Relief crashed over her so intensely she almost collapsed. "I have got you," he said fiercely. "You are safe now." Behind them, the fire was spreading through the boarding house at an alarming rate. People were spilling out into the street, shouting for buckets and water. Cole pulled Tabitha away from the chaos, his eyes scanning her frantically. "Are you hurt?" "My hands," she managed. "I broke the window." He examined them quickly, his face grim at the sight of the blood. "We need to get these wrapped. Come on." "Martha and the others, Sheriff Morrison is getting them out," Cole assured her. "Right now I need to take care of you." He led her to the sheriff's office, which was blessedly quiet and dark. Cole lit a lamp and pulled out a first aid kit, carefully cleaning the cuts on her hands. His touch was gentle despite the tension in his shoulders. "Garrett?" she asked. "Still inside as far as I know. The other 2 men are dead. They shot at me when I came running and I shot back." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I will not apologize for that." "I do not want you to," Tabitha said. "They would have killed me." "Yes," Cole agreed. "They would have." He finished bandaging her hands and looked up at her, his eyes blazing with something fierce and primal. "When I saw you climb out that window and jump, my heart stopped. Do you understand?" "It actually stopped. I am sorry." "Do not apologize for surviving," he said roughly. "You did everything right. You signaled me, you fought back, you escaped. You were incredible." "I was terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear," Cole said. "It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. And you have more courage than anyone I have ever met." Outside, they could hear the commotion continuing. The sound of the fire, the shouts of the bucket brigade, the organized chaos of a town fighting to save itself. Cole stood and looked out the window, his jaw tight. "I need to go help," he said. "But I want you to stay here, lock the door behind me." "Cole, wait." Tabitha stood, crossing to him. "Thank you for everything, for protecting me, for believing in me, for seeing me." He turned, and the look on his face made her breath catch. "I see you, Tabitha Harrison," he said softly. "I have seen you since the moment you ran down that street without ever looking back, and I am going to keep seeing you for as long as you will let me." Then he kissed her. It was not gentle or tentative. It was fierce and desperate, full of all the fear and relief and longing that had been building between them for days. Tabitha kissed him back with equal fervor, her bandaged hands gripping his shirt, anchoring herself to him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I will come back," he promised. "I always will." "You better," Tabitha whispered. He kissed her once more, quick and hard. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the office with her racing heart and the knowledge that everything had changed between them in the span of a single kiss. The fire took most of the night to put out. By dawn, the boarding house was a blackened shell, still smoking in places. Martha and the other boarders were safe, taken in by various townspeople. Sam Garrett had been pulled from the ruins, badly burned but alive. He was in a cell now, awaiting trial. The threat that had hung over Tabitha for days was finally, definitively over. She stood in the street as the sun rose, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her, watching the destruction. She had lost what few possessions she owned. Her clothes, her mother's Bible, everything gone. But she was alive, and so was everyone else, and somehow that felt like victory. Cole found her there as the town began to stir. He looked exhausted, covered in soot and ash, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You should be resting." "So should you," Tabitha pointed out. He smiled faintly and came to stand beside her. They did not touch, not with half the town watching, but she felt the connection between them as surely as if they were holding hands. "What are you going to do?" Cole asked quietly. "Martha lost her business. There is nothing keeping you here now." Tabitha looked at him, at his strong profile and tired eyes, and felt something settle into place inside her. "I am staying," she said. "This is my home now." "Yeah." The hope in his voice was unmistakable. "Yeah," she confirmed. "Besides, someone told me that sometimes running brings you exactly where you need to be. I think he might have been right." Cole's smile was like the sunrise, bright and full of promise. "I am glad," he said simply. The weeks that followed were busy ones. The town rallied around Martha, helping her find temporary housing and discussing plans for rebuilding. A carpenter from Sacramento arrived to assess the damage and draw up plans for a new boarding house. Tabitha found work helping at the general store, which had been overwhelmed with business after the fire destroyed several people's homes and supplies. Through it all, Cole was a constant presence. He called on her properly now, with flowers and polite conversation and careful attention to propriety. They took walks in the evening, attended church together every Sunday, sat on various porches and talked about everything and nothing. The town watched their courtship with approval and not a little speculation. Sally Foster had been right. Sometimes things just needed truth, and the truth between Cole and Tabitha was written all over both of them. Sam Garrett was tried and convicted, sentenced to hang. Tabitha testified at the trial, standing in front of the whole town and describing what she had seen that day at the bank. Cole sat in the front row the entire time, his presence giving her strength. When the verdict was read, she felt no triumph, only relief that it was over. 2 months after the fire, on a warm October evening, Cole took Tabitha to the river that ran just outside town. They sat on the bank and watched the water flow by, golden in the setting sun. "I have been thinking," Cole said, his voice careful. "That sounds dangerous," Tabitha teased. He smiled but did not take the bait. "I have been a deputy for 5 years. It is good work, important work, but it is also dangerous work, and lately I have been wondering if maybe it is time for something different." Tabitha turned to look at him, surprised. "What would you do instead?" "The sheriff is talking about retiring next year. There is going to be an election. He wants me to run." "Sheriff Jackson," Tabitha said, testing the sound of it. "I like it." "It is more responsibility but less day-to-day danger," Cole continued. "More administrative work, organizing deputies, planning. It would mean I could." He trailed off, looking suddenly nervous. "Could what?" Cole took a breath and reached into his pocket. When his hand emerged, he was holding a small wooden box. Tabitha's heart began to race. "Tabitha Harrison," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "I know we have only known each other for 2 months. I know most people would say that is not enough time, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. From the moment I pulled you behind that water trough, from the moment I saw you refuse to turn back even with death chasing you, I knew you were someone extraordinary, someone worth protecting, worth knowing, worth loving." Tears were streaming down Tabitha's face now, but she did not care. "I love you," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "I love your courage and your strength and your kindness. I love the way you laugh and the way you think and the way you make me want to be a better man. And if you will have me, I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you always feel safe enough to relax, safe enough to be yourself, safe enough to build the life you want. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Tabitha said through her tears. "Yes, of course, yes." Cole slipped the ring on her finger, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and nothing else mattered except this moment, this man, this love that had grown from terror and trauma into something beautiful and true. They were married in November, in the same little church where they had sat together that first Sunday. Martha helped Tabitha make her dress, a beautiful creation of white silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. Sally Foster stood up with her, and Sheriff Morrison stood with Cole. The whole town turned out for the wedding, filling the pews to capacity. When Cole lifted her veil and looked at her with such tenderness and joy, Tabitha felt her heart overflow. This man who had saved her life, who had protected her through the worst days of fear, who had shown her what it meant to be truly seen and valued. This was her home now, not a place but a person. "I love you," she whispered as the preacher pronounced them husband and wife. "I love you too," Cole replied. "Always." They moved into a small house on the edge of town, a neat little place with 2 bedrooms and a porch that faced the sunset. Cole had bought it with money he had been saving for years, and Tabitha immediately set about making it a home. She sewed curtains and braided rugs and planted flowers in the yard. Cole built her a bookshelf and filled it with volumes he ordered from San Francisco. The new boarding house was completed in the spring, and Martha threw a grand opening party that the whole town attended. She had expanded the business, adding a small restaurant on the first floor. She hired Tabitha to make curtains and tablecloths, and soon other people in town were commissioning sewing work from her as well. The dream of a dress shop did not seem so distant anymore. Cole ran for sheriff the following year and won easily. He was good at the job, fair and firm and respected by everyone. Tabitha sat in the audience at town council meetings and watched him present reports and make decisions, pride swelling in her chest. This was her husband. This brilliant, brave, compassionate man had chosen her, and she had chosen him right back. In the spring of 1874, Tabitha realized she was pregnant. She told Cole on a Sunday morning as they sat on their porch drinking coffee and watching the world wake up. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, joy, wonder, fear, before settling into a grin so wide she could not help but laugh. "We are having a baby," he said, as if testing the words. "We are," Tabitha confirmed. Cole set down his coffee cup and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tenderly she felt tears prick her eyes. "I am going to take such good care of you," he promised. "Both of you." "I know," she said simply, because she did know. This was the man who had protected her from bullets and fire and fear itself. He would move heaven and earth to keep their child safe. Their son was born in November, 2 years to the day after their wedding. They named him Charles, after Cole's father. He had his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair, and from the moment he entered the world with a loud, indignant cry, he owned both their hearts completely. Tabitha had never known such exhaustion or such joy. The sleepless nights and constant demands of caring for an infant were overwhelming at times, but Cole was there through all of it. He changed diapers and walked the floor with a crying baby and sang off-key lullabies in his deep voice. He had meant what he said about taking care of them, and he proved it every single day. When Charles was 6 months old, Tabitha finally opened her dress shop. It was small, just 2 rooms rented above the general store, but it was hers. She took commissions for dresses and alterations, and slowly built a reputation for quality work and fair prices. Cole watched Charles while she worked, bringing the baby to the shop for feedings and just to visit. The sight of her tall, strong sheriff husband cradling their tiny son never failed to make her smile. The years flowed by like the river outside town, steady and sure. Charles grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses and books in equal measure. When he was 3, Tabitha gave birth to a daughter they named Clara, a sweet-natured child with her father's smile. 2 years later came another son, Michael, who had his mother's fierce independence from the day he was born. Cole proved to be an excellent sheriff and an even better father. He taught his children to ride and shoot and think for themselves. He read to them every night, his deep voice bringing stories to life. He showed them by example what it meant to be fair, to be kind, to stand up for what was right. Tabitha's dress shop expanded, eventually taking over the entire second floor above the general store. She hired 2 young women to help with the sewing, and together they produced some of the finest dresses in the region. Women came from as far as Sacramento to commission gowns from her. The girl who had run for her life down a dusty street had built something lasting and beautiful. On a warm evening in the summer of 1885, 13 years after that terrifying day at the bank, Tabitha and Cole sat on their porch and watched their children play in the yard. Charles was 11 now, tall and serious like his father. Clara was 8, dreamy and artistic. Michael was 6, full of mischief and laughter. "You ever think about that day?" Cole asked quietly. "The day we met?" "Sometimes," Tabitha admitted. "Usually when I am feeling particularly grateful for everything we have." Cole reached over and took her hand, his thumb rubbing across her knuckles in the familiar gesture that still made her heart flutter. "I think about it all the time," he said. "I think about how you could have frozen, could have hidden, could have turned back, but you did not. You ran forward and somehow, impossibly, you ran straight into my life." "You saved me," Tabitha reminded him. "No," Cole said firmly. "You saved yourself. I just made sure you had a safe place to land afterward." Tabitha leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun set over the life they had built together. He was right, in a way. She had saved herself that day. But he had given her something just as important: the security to stop running, to put down roots, to believe that she could have the life she wanted without constantly looking over her shoulder. "I love you," she said, not for the first time and certainly not for the last. "I love you too," Cole replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Every day more than the day before." The children called for them to come play, and they rose together, hand in hand, and joined their family in the yard. The evening stretched out before them, full of laughter and joy and the simple pleasure of being together. Years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays and small daily miracles. Charles grew into a thoughtful young man who decided to study law. Clara developed a talent for painting, her watercolors hanging in homes throughout the county. Michael followed his father into law enforcement, becoming a deputy at 18 with Cole's reluctant blessing. Tabitha's dress shop became an institution in Yuba City. She trained dozens of young women in the art of sewing and business, helping them build skills that would support them throughout their lives. Martha remained her closest friend and confidant, the 2 women growing old together with grace and humor. Cole served as sheriff for 25 years before finally retiring. The town threw him a party that lasted 2 days, with speeches and gifts and enough food to feed everyone twice over. Tabitha stood beside him through all of it, proud beyond measure of the man he had been and continued to be. In their retirement, they traveled some, visiting San Francisco and Sacramento, and once taking a train all the way to Chicago. But they always came back to Yuba City, to the little house that had grown with their family, to the town that was truly home. On their 30th anniversary, Cole took Tabitha back to the river where he had proposed. They were both gray now, their faces lined with the passage of time, but when he looked at her, she saw the same love and devotion that had been there from the beginning. 30 years, he marveled. Sometimes it feels like 30 minutes, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. Both are true, Tabitha said wisely. Time is strange like that. I would do it all again, Cole said seriously. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, I would choose you every single time. Even the part where someone tried to kill me and I burned down a boarding house. Cole laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Especially that part. It brought us together, did it not?" Tabitha smiled and kissed him, this man who had been her protector, her partner, her great love. "It did," she agreed. "It absolutely did." They sat by the river until the stars came out, talking and remembering and simply being together. This was what their love had become. Not the desperate passion of those early days, though that still flickered between them in quiet moments, but something deeper and more enduring. A partnership built on trust and respect, and the unwavering certainty that they were exactly where they belonged. As they walked back to town in the darkness, Cole's arm around her shoulders and her hand on his waist, Tabitha thought about the girl she had been at 20. Frightened and alone, running for her life, convinced that she would never be safe again. That girl could never have imagined this life, this love, this perfect sense of being home. But then she had met Cole Jackson, a deputy with gray eyes and a fierce protective streak. He had seen her courage even when she had not seen it herself. He had promised to keep her safe, and he had kept that promise every single day for 30 years. More than that, he had given her the space and security to become herself, to build her dreams, to stop running and start living. Their children had children of their own now. Charles had 2 daughters and a son, all living in Sacramento where he practiced law. Clara had married an artist and they lived in San Francisco with their twin boys. Michael had stayed in Yuba City, following in his father's footsteps as a lawman, and he had recently gotten engaged to a lovely young teacher. The house that had once held just the 2 of them now regularly overflowed with grandchildren, their laughter and energy filling every corner. Tabitha cooked enormous meals and sewed tiny clothes, while Cole told stories about the old days and taught the children to whittle and ride. They were building a legacy, she realized. Not just of love between the 2 of them, but of family, of community, of showing the next generation what it meant to care for each other. On a crisp autumn morning in 1902, 30 years after that fateful day at the bank, Tabitha woke to find Cole watching her with a soft smile on his face. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Just remembering," he said. "How lucky I am, how lucky we are. We made our own luck," Tabitha pointed out. "Through a lot of hard work and faith and love." "True," Cole acknowledged, "but I am still grateful for every moment." They rose and dressed, moving through their morning routine with the ease of long practice. Breakfast together on the porch, reading the newspaper, planning their day. Michael was bringing his fiancée for dinner, and Tabitha wanted to make her famous apple pie. As she rolled out dough in the kitchen, Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder just like he had done 1,000 times before. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he murmured. "Not yet," Tabitha said, smiling. "But the day is young." "I love you, Tabitha Jackson, more than I have words to express." She turned in his arms and kissed him, flour dusting his shirt. "I love you too, Cole, always and forever." That evening, surrounded by family and laughter and the warmth of a life well lived, Tabitha looked around the table and felt a profound sense of contentment. This was what she had run toward all those years ago, even though she had not known it at the time. Not just safety from bullets and bad men, but safety in love, in partnership, in building something that would last beyond their own lives. Cole caught her eye across the table and winked, and her heart fluttered just like it had when she was 20. Some things, she thought, never changed. The essentials remained the same. His steady presence, her fierce independence, and the love that had grown between them from the moment he pulled her to safety and promised she would never have to face danger alone. She had never turned back that day, running blind with bullets flying. And Cole Jackson had made sure that from then on, she always felt safe enough to relax, to be herself, to stop running and start living. It was a promise he had kept for 30 years, and she knew with absolute certainty that he would keep it for however many years they had left. That was the real story, she thought. Not the drama of that first day, though that was where it started. The real story was in all the days after, in the morning coffees and evening walks, in the children raised and the dreams built, in the way he still looked at her like she hung the moon, and the way she still reached for his hand in moments of joy or sorrow. In 30 years of choosing each other, every single day, no matter what. As the evening wound down and their guests departed, Cole and Tabitha stood on their porch and watched the sun set over Yuba City. The town had changed so much since that day in 1872. Electric lights now illuminated the streets. Automobiles were starting to appear alongside horses. The railroad had brought prosperity and growth. But some things remained constant. The river still flowed, the mountains still stood sentinel in the distance, and love still conquered fear. "Happy?" Cole asked, pulling her close. "Perfectly," Tabitha replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They went inside together as darkness fell, closing the door on another day and another year. Behind them, the town settled into sleep. Ahead of them, whatever years remained. And through it all, they had each other, the cowboy who had saved her life and stayed by her side, and the woman who had taught him that courage was not just facing danger, but building something beautiful in its aftermath. Their story had started with running and bullets and terror. But it had become something else entirely. A testament to the power of protection given freely, trust earned slowly, and love that grew deeper with every passing year. Cole had promised to make sure she always felt safe enough to relax, and he had kept that promise in 1,000 small ways and a few large ones, creating a life where Tabitha could not just survive, but truly thrive. And in the end, that was the greatest love story of all. Not the dramatic rescue, but the everyday choice to keep choosing each other, to keep building together, to keep loving through all the years that followed. From that first moment, when she never turned back to this quiet evening 3 decades later, their love had been the constant, the foundation, the truth that made everything else possible. As they climbed into bed that night, Cole's arm around her and her head on his shoulder, Tabitha smiled into the darkness. She had run for her life once, terrified and alone. But she had run straight into the arms of a man who showed her what it meant to be truly safe, truly seen, truly loved. And that had made all the difference.